Hey class, in this video I'm going to talk about Aristotle's discussion of the three different kinds of friendship and address some of the issues and questions that arise from that. So, first thing to note is that the word that Aristotle is using here that gets translated as friendship is philia. If you remember from earlier in the semester, that's one of the Greek words that can be translated as love. It's the love that is sort of like friendship. And so philia is different than the eros that Socrates or Plato analyzed in the Symposium. So we're moving to a discussion of a different kind of love. It's not the transcendent yearning love of eros, but the friendly or more comfortable love of philia. Despite the fact that philia might not seem as dramatic as eros, Aristotle thinks it's very important. He actually says early in Book 8 that philia is more important for a city than justice, that it's more important in a city that people feel friendly towards one another than that they are just, although Aristotle certainly thinks that justice is important. But in any case, he distinguishes between three forms of philia or friendship, depending on what you might say the cause or the foundation of that friendship. So this basically gives you Aristotle's theory of three different kinds of friendship, and those are often called the utility friendship, the pleasurable friendship, and the complete friendship. The utility friendship arises out of a shared sense of usefulness, that this is the sort of friendship that one might have with coworkers or then the second kind of friendship is pleasure friendship. This is where you and the friend find the same things pleasurable. You enjoy doing the same things. So this would be, similar hobbies, similar interests, and the basis for the friendship, Aristotle would say, is the shared pleasure. When that shared pleasure is no longer shared, then the friendship is going to tend to dissolve. Similarly, with the utility friendship, the basis for the friendship is some shared task or shared item that is deemed useful by the both of you. And when that object of utility is no longer there or no longer needed, then the friendship in question will also tend to dissolve. Now, the common thing that both pleasurable friendships and utility friendships have in common is that neither one of them are actually based on the people involved, right? The friendships are based on something external to the two people that they both desire or like or use or whatever, and that external thing is then the foundation of their friendship. Aristotle then says you have the complete friendship, which is different from this. In the complete friendship, the object of the friendship or the foundation of the friendship is the other person themselves. It's not anything extrinsic to the person, like a shared interest or a shared pleasure, but again, it's the person themselves. Ultimately, Aristotle is going to say that the question that raises is, what is it about the person themselves that is likable? And Aristotle's answer is always virtue. Foundation for friendship is the virtues of the other person. Right? You're not friends with them because of something they can do for you. You're not friends with them because you enjoy doing similar things necessarily, but you're friends with them because of their virtue. And for Aristotle, virtue is something rooted very deep in the character of a person. So this sort of friendship is rooted very deep in the person. Therefore, he says, it is a more permanent and more lasting type of friendship that will last for as long as the virtue lasts. This also makes it a much more sort of elite kind of friendship, because Aristotle is going to maintain that only virtuous people can have complete friendships. And you might say, well, why is that? Well, certainly in the case of a complete friendship, I like the other person because of their virtues. But friendship is a two-way street, so they would also have to like me because of my virtues. If one or both of us lacks virtue, then you can't have a complete friendship. Keeping in mind that for Aristotle, virtue means excellence. Only very excellent people are going to be able to be friends in the complete sense, which means for Aristotle that most people live most of their lives never having a complete friendship. Most people live most of their lives having utility friendships or pleasure friendships, but not complete friendship. Complete friendship is a very, very rare thing. What is the sort of the nature of the complete friendship? Well, the complete friendship, as I said, is a two-way street where the friend and I both will the good for each other. We both want each other to achieve the good. And this is another reason why we both have to be virtuous, because we have to agree on what the good is. If someone wants me to achieve something that they believe is to be good, but I don't, then I'm going to find that person annoying. So the complete friendship requires virtue, and it also requires an agreement about what is good, right? Which Aristotle thinks virtuous people will tend to also agree about what is good. So with these three different kinds of friendships, right? Utility friendships, pleasure friendships, complete friendships, the first two kinds of friendships, Aristotle thinks, tend to come and go fairly quickly, and no one should be bothered by it, right? There are plenty of, I'm sure you all have the experience of having a coworker that you get along fairly well with, and you enjoy each other's company, and hey, we work together, whatever, maybe we go out and like get something to eat or get drinks after work, but as soon as that person no longer works with you, you don't do things with them anymore. Aristotle thinks that that's okay, insofar as the friendship was a work friendship. It was a utility friendship. It wasn't based on anything other than the fact that you work together. Similarly, you might have someone that you're friends with because you have a common interest. Maybe they're on your soccer team, and so you and this other person play well together on the soccer team. You both enjoy playing soccer, yada, yada, yada. But then something happens and this other person, quits the team. They don't play soccer anymore. They don't enjoy it anymore, right? They're into something else now. That friendship's going to wither. And again, Aristotle's going to say that's okay, because the thing that the friendship was based on, the foundation of the friendship, was a shared love of soccer. And once that's gone, it is entirely natural that the friendship will fade away. Now, Aristotle thinks that really nobody should be upset about this, that this is just the nature of those friendships. He thinks that a big cause of people being upset or hurt at the dissolution of a friendship is when there is a misunderstanding by one or both parties as to the nature of the friendship, right? If the soccer friend thought that the friendship extended far beyond playing on the same team, then they might be hurt when the phone stops ringing after they quit the team. If they understand that their soccer friendships were based on a shared interest in soccer, then they'll also understand why the team stops calling when they quit the team. Similarly with work friends and utility friendships, right? If we understand what the friendship is based on, then we will not be upset when those friendships, dissolve away. Complete friendship is a horse of a different color, because remember, complete friendships are based on the virtues that you and the friend share. And virtues for Aristotle are more deeply rooted in who you are, or I should say how you are, and therefore more permanent. Aristotle thinks that virtues are habits, and habits don't change very quickly, right? It's very difficult to change a habit. So the virtuous person will tend to remain virtuous, barring, some wild change in their lives. Therefore, complete friendships will tend to last longer. And when a complete friendship sort of breaks up, Aristotle would maintain that it would only break up for one of two reasons. One reason is distance. Friendship requires activity. And anything like, in Aristotle uses the example of distance, anything that is going to inhibit the activities of friendship is going to lead to the withering of that friendship, right? Even so, if I am friends with someone and we're both virtuous and it's a complete friendship and we remain virtuous, but friend A moves 1,000 miles away and we can't hang out anymore and we don't Skype or Zoom or whatever now, then that friendship is going to wither away, right? Because friendship requires friendly activities, Aristotle thinks. So that's one way the complete friendship can end. And that was probably more common in Aristotle's time, because if someone, didn't live within walking distance of you, you basically didn't communicate with them, right? Now we have telephones and texting and, all of those things that make it possible to continue friendly activities even if your friend lives, thousands of miles away. But in Aristotle's day, that clearly wasn't possible. But the general point, though, is that friendship requires friendly activities. So when those activities slow down or cease, the friendship will begin to also sort of slow down or cease. The second reason complete friendships might change is when one of the people does in fact change. Now this could happen one of two ways, right? So we have these two friends. One friend could become even more virtuous, and now they no longer have the same virtues. Or in the other scenario, one becomes less virtuous. So the friendship can change because one person becomes more virtuous or one person becomes less virtuous. In the case where one person becomes more virtuous, Aristotle does think that that friendship will be impossible to maintain. Not because of, anyone being a bad person or anything, but just because the complete friendship is based on having shared virtues. Now they are no longer shared virtues. An example of what Aristotle has in mind is when, and you have to understand that for Aristotle, what's virtuous for someone to do depends a lot on their situation in life and their capabilities. So let's say we have two college students, and they're both virtuous college students, so they're both about at this level. However, as time goes on, this college student, begins to take on sort of the virtues of a working adult, or the virtues of a provider for a family, or the virtues of a leader in some organization. And so they're getting higher up in virtues, and this person hasn't gotten bad, they've just kind of stayed the same. It's going to be very difficult for this friendship to continue, right? So that's the first, an example of the first kind. An example of the second kind is if sometimes a virtuous person will, slowly pick up bad habits and become a vicious person. How we respond to this change, Aristotle thinks, depends on whether it's this one where one of the friends got better, or this one where one of the friends got worse. In this one, where one of the friends has gotten better, but the other one didn't, just kind of stayed the same, Aristotle thinks that that friendship is going to dissolve, but you should remember why it dissolved and not have hard feelings. And when these people see each other again, they should be glad to see each other and remember that old friendship they had back in the day when things were like this, right? if you're up here and you have the opportunity to do this person a favor or to, visit with them now and again, that's fine. On the other hand, if the friend became bad, then Aristotle thinks, and this might seem harsh to a lot of people, you basically cut them out. He says, first you might try to get them to not become bad, but once they've become bad, then Aristotle would say you owe that person nothing. Because your friendship was based on them being virtuous. And for Aristotle, virtues are so deeply rooted in your character that the vicious version of this person is almost not the same. You were friends with a virtuous person. You didn't sign up to be friends with a vicious person. So that vicious person, or that person that's become vicious, is a different person, and you owe them nothing. So to summarize, for Aristotle, 3 forms of friendship: utility friendships, pleasure friendships, complete friendships. Utility and pleasure friendships are based in things external to the character of the friend. Because those things are based on something external, they come into being and pass away very quickly as those external objects change. Complete friendship is rooted in virtue. As long as 2 people are virtuous, they can have that complete friendship. But when the virtues no longer match, that complete friendship is going to change and wither away. If it withers away because one got better, Aristotle thinks no hard feelings, remember them as an old friend from back in the day, and deal with it like that. If it changes because the friend got worse, well, then you can cut that person out of your life. Because you didn't sign up to be friends with someone down here, you signed up to be friends with someone up here. With that, I'm going to wrap up this video, and I will talk to y'all later.